a sec. So my apologies.
As long as I don't break it.
You're fine. You are totally fine. Okay, fabulous. So, welcome to another Inspiration Behind the Stories. I'm here with the absolutely phenomenal Perle Besserman, the author of Phase Men. And I'm just going to jump right into it if that's okay. So, Pearl, what inspired you to write Phase Men?
Okay. Several women, myself included, but actually one major friend of mine who was a dear, dear Zen friend of mine. She was my BFF, actually, here in Hawaii. I met her many years ago. She was a wild child from El Paso,
Mm.
and was partly Caddo Indian and partly Dutch, and lived a very interesting sort of life because she discovered her actual father was a military guy who was Spanish and Caddo Indian, I think. Anyway, she discovered that her name was Martinez and that she was really a very amazing, she had an amazing history. And then also had to reconcile her life with a mother who was very upright and Protestant and very judgmental and didn't like Jenny. And Jenny had this stepfather who adopted her. And what was so interesting about her is that she was blonde haired and blue eyed and was the only person I know who could ever eat the most hot chilies I've ever tasted in my life. And so she's one person who becomes very much a Fae because she lived that kind of life. She was also very rebellious. She ran away. She was raised by Native Americans, rode bareback on horses and stuff. And she and I couldn't be more opposite, right? Here I am, a kid from Brooklyn, but I also shared that very androgynous, somehow male identified because of my father, I think, sense of independence. And I was just taking a walk this morning and thinking about this interview and thinking, wow, I never had any girlfriends who were girly. All the girly girls rejected me and hated me. And yet I was always a very pretty girl and a girl who was an actor and a dancer. And, so there was this strange combination of androgynous, always good friends with boys, running around and doing wild things with boys, just like Jenny. She did it in Texas, I did it in Brooklyn. And somehow these two women fused into one. And that's how Faye was born.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because when Jenny died, which was a big, big loss in my life. I felt like I lost half of myself.
I'm
And
sure.
and Manfred, my husband, was a dear friend of hers too. She was a naturalist and an archaeologist, and amazing environmentalist. And so, I kind of put those two things together. And she was also a very devoted Zen Buddhist who went to Japan, as I did. So all of that comes together in Faye. And the kind of woman that doesn't stop traveling no matter what, she's going to go around the world and see for herself, and gets into trouble, a lot of trouble with men, with husbands, with with boyfriends. We both did, actually. And I guess that's how she grew. She grew out of that. And I guess women who have a kind of male identification because of their fathers, mostly because of their fathers, I think. I knew one other woman like that, too. One of them became a surgeon because her father was a surgeon. And my father had the idea that I would be the first female Supreme Court judge, except Ruth Ginsburg beat me to it. So, and I never wanted to be a judge. I started law school, by the way, and I left it and I went to get my PhD in literature instead because I've always been a writer. So I published my first story when I was 9. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, I knew I would do that. I knew that I was destined to keep writing because I can't stop telling stories and thinking stories and diving into stories. And that's pretty much the background of Faye.
Got it. So what made you say, you know what, I have got to write this story now?
I've got to write this story now. Because all the other novels that I've written have led up to this story. Especially, interestingly enough, my favorite novel actually is Kabuki Boy, which takes place in 19th century Tokugawa, Japan, and it's about a kabuki actor who is androgynous, kind of. You know, the male actors in kabuki always play female roles. There are no female actors in kabuki. Sort of like Shakespeare, you know, all the females were played by men. And it's very hard to tell what they are. There's a film out now, a very famous film that it won something at Cannes recently, called Kahoku, which is about 2 female-male kabuki actors. And when I saw the film, I burst into tears because it's 20th century and very different, but my story was right there. And I said, oh my God. And I think I sent you some information about that because everybody said to me, oh, Kabuki Boy, that's you, right? So I kind of felt after I wrote that one, yeah, I think he's going to have to reappear, but in a more 20th century realistic mold. And he's going to really break through the androgyny and become female, like me. And like Jenny, who had many wild relationships with many wild people. So I think she was born out of having to tell who she really was underneath all of that kind of androgeneity. You know, she comes out as very female in the end. And all the other books that I've written are, women. They're about women. And all somehow that story told in different guises, in different countries, different places, different backgrounds, but they all stem from that. In fact, the first story that I just told you about, the 9-year-old published story, was called Penny Was an Ant, and it's about a female ant. So I think it's always been in there, you know, the female gene is that story. And
wow.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because determining who you really are is always, until recently, people were either boy or girl, remember? You know, and that's why people have such a hard time with trans people and bi people. You know, my closest friends now are 2 gay guys, and they said to me, oh, they read all my books. And I went to a reading at University of Hawaii, and they came and they said, oh my God, Faye, how you captured what it's like to be bi, you know, or to be gay, or to be straight, or to be everything, you know. So I feel that those stories are very touching because people can't accept them. Whereas, say, in the ancient world, it was very normal
Mm.
to be everything. All the gods are everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, oftentimes when writers are exploring a narrative, there are certain questions that they're kind of obsessed with. There are things that they feel like they need to answer. What
Mm.
were some of those questions for you as you were writing Phase Men?
Mm. Spiritual search.
Oh, wow.
Spiritual, yeah. The first question that set me on this path, the Zen path, occurred when I was 5 years old,
Hmm.
and I was standing in my parents' bedroom. My mother had a big triptych of mirrors, three mirrors, two on each side and one in the center. And I was standing there and looking at this little girl, who was wearing a red dress and had a big red bow in her hair. My mother always dressed me up in these very fancy little clothes. Um, and I stood there and I stared into the mirror, and there was an infinity of little girls with big red bows and red
Hmm.
dresses, which absolutely kept me fascinated and fixated on those mirrors, because I kept looking through and seeing myself multiplied thousands of times.
Hmm.
And the question just rose up in me, and that was, 5 years old, who am I?
Mm.
Who am I really?
Hmm.
And that's been the burning question that set me off on this spiritual search throughout the world. It took me a long time,
Hmm.
until I can't say I answered it definitively, because you never answer it definitively.
And it changes.
And it
Yeah.
changes, it
Hmm.
morphs. It's an existential question that has so many facets.
Hmm.
Um, it also got me, uh, I became actually fixated on finding what this was all about. And it sent me through the world into numerous spiritual practices. I went to China, I went to India, I went to Japan, I traveled throughout Europe. I had several teachers, Tibetans, Sufis. I was dancing with Sufis in Turkey. you know, um, that was the kind of thing that needed to be expressed. And I think the best form of it was when I was in New York on the subway, and I was reading a book. I had been reading books on spirituality forever and taking courses. And um, I became a yoga teacher.
Hmm.
Uh, I studied with a wonderful yogi, an Indian man who taught me everything, until I became a yogi and I started teaching yoga on television. I became the TV yogi.
Hmm.
So I was there, right in the smack in the middle of everything.
Hmm.
Uh, and then one day I was on the subway in New York after all these travels, and reading Shunryu Suzuki's Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind.
Hmm.
And I was standing up and holding on to the strap, and the train was moving around very fast. And I was reading, and at one point I read one line that said, um, your breath is like a revolving door, swinging in and out. And I just burst into hysterical tears.
Mm.
And I knew that Zen was going to be the final path that I was going to commit to.
Mm.
And, and I went to a Zendo in New York, and that's where it started. And then
So,
ultimately led me to all these adventures in Zen practice.
wow, fabulous.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take like 100 steps back.
Okay.
Uh, can you give folks a brief description of what Phase Men is about?
Phase Men, I think, is about a woman who starts out really questioning her identity, a very talented woman,
Mm-hmm.
but very, in some ways, a kind of troubled woman,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but with such guts that she'll explore everything to the end. She also has a strong sense of social justice, and which still exists, by the way. I was very active in civil rights movements and traveled all over the South. Got myself into trouble there. Got thrown off buses because I went to the colored um, bathroom. Um, that sort of thing. And you get that in Faye, who goes off actually at age 18, I believe it is, to Mexico City and joins a revolution there. Um, so she's somebody that has this strict sense of social justice, of fairness, of goodness, but she also has blind spots. Uh, specifically when it comes to men, she makes bad judgments.
Mm-hmm.
Bad judgments in the men she falls in love with. I'm not sure she actually is capable of falling in love at the beginning. I think she becomes fascinated and fixated on certain ideas. And I think that happens to certain kinds of women who are brought up to be focused on the truth, or justice, or whatever it is that their families, I guess, are focused on.
Mm-hmm.
So she starts out, by the way, with a military father on a military base. It's kind of interesting because she deviates from that 150 degrees and goes off to the opposite. She goes off to New York, which is the opposite of what everything that her family raised her to be. So she's a rebel. And I think I'm thinking here of Jenny very clearly, and myself to some degree, but the woman who goes 360 degrees around from what she was raised to be, and in that strange way finds herself. She finally throws herself away in a healthy way, in a good way, instead of wasting her energy by throwing herself into unworthy people. So I think in some ways too, it's a love story where she finally, at the end, I couldn't help it. I had to be my old 19th century novel self and make it a happy ending, because she goes through hell, literally. And so it's my favorite novels are all 19th century. Dickens is my favorite novelist, and I was kind of mortified when people started talking about the Emily Bronte movie, which is all wrong. I taught this. I mean, I have a PhD in literature and taught comparative literature for years, and so those influences stuck with me. I think there's a lot of 19th century romantic and, in some cases, very realistic character-drawn novels. And the exploration of character and how social interactions affect character and how character can grow or be demolished by certain kinds of experiences. What I didn't put in there was some of the most dangerous things that happen in real life. So I was traveling through the Middle East during wartime, writing for a women's magazine on women at war, and that was pretty hairy. I ended up in Tunisia in an office, customs office or someplace, where people were holding guns at me.
Oh boy!
End of a Kalashnikov. So I didn't put those things in, and if I did, people would say, "Oh no, you really you overdid it, Pearl." So I just left her in Japan, where it was relatively safe.
Got it. Was there any part of this that you found difficult to write? Like, what was the hardest part to write?
The hardest part to write was, believe it or not, the happy ending where she meets the love of her life.
Oh, wow. Okay. Now, I'm assuming this book took a while to write. Where were you on your own life journey as you were writing this story? And do you feel as though writing this changed you? And if so, how?
By the time I wrote this, what year was it? 2024?
We published it in 24. Yeah.
Right, 24. Oh, by that time, that was right after the pandemic. It's interesting because I was already teaching Zen. My husband and I have a Zen group in Princeton, New Jersey, which is still going on. It's over 30 years. So I was already teaching Zen. And it's interesting too, because just during the pandemic, at the height of the pandemic, before I think the book was already finished, the manuscript was done, but by the time it was ready to come out, I ended up in the hospital.
Oh boy.
Not with COVID, but COVID was raging, and I ended up having surgery. I ended up having a hysterectomy, which was an emergency. I had to rush to the hospital. So I think something about that experience, and the doctors coming in with masks on, and nurses not being able to talk to me because they would have to run out of the room, and being in a really fraught situation on the verge of death. That was a real confrontation with everything that I had understood in a kind of spiritual way. But this was physical. This was real. And I think that made a very deep impression on me. I've never really had a fear of death. And practicing Zen all that time, I think, helped me to understand what it is to confront death and to be a person in a body who has fear, fear of the unknown, fear of termination. But all the experiences, the Zen experiences, and working with koans, and really being in those sessions, those endless, sessions where people say things to you, running around with big sticks and yelling at you like samurai, if you can't stay here and kill the self, get out, And I really lived it in the hospital. If you can't handle this, get the fuck out.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What surprised you the most while you were writing this?
What surprised me the most while I was writing this? I think Jenny's bravery, which gave me even more momentum for my own bravery. She took off for Japan well before I did, when she was younger. And she did it in such a wild way. She jumped on a sailboat. She had never sailed. And some people asked her to be on the sailboat to Yokohama from Hawaii. And she did it like that. And she got on a motorcycle when she was in Japan, and she joined with one of the great teachers, became the son of one of the great teachers, who became the head of the lineage of my teachers. And I think the kind of bravery mind, one of my teachers used to call it bravery mind. I think that surprised me the most, that bravery mind really existed, and that I had it too.
Wow.
I think
Um,
it's to be brave to write novels.
oh, absolutely. It's brave to write and share it to the general public. Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything that almost didn't make it into the book? And if so, what? And why did you keep it in?
Um, yeah, the husband's relationship with Sam Rubin, his best friend. Um, I almost did not put that in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I thought that it needed some backstory, and I think the editor, uh, Rodolfo,
Oh,
uh,
uh-huh.
asked me questions about it. Actually, he wanted more information about. He was annoyed with me at first because I kept putting it in as backstory in places that didn't seem appropriate,
I see. Okay.
and so I felt this needs to be in here.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to annoy the reader because you got this wonderful, brave, crazy woman, and she sticks herself in a situation which is a little bit like, I don't know, somebody not really worthy of her, or
Mm-hmm.
somebody he's on a totally different path.
Mm-hmm.
And what does he have to do with all the rest that comes? And it
Mm.
isn't until you get to the Zen part of the story that you see that she has a habit of linking up with the wrong men.
Mm. Got it. Okay. That makes sense. Of all the potential readers, who do you feel will fall the hardest for this book?
Will fall for the book the hardest.
Mm-hmm.
I think women who've been, and men who've been driven from childhood
Mm.
to find the answers to their existential questions, and how they can kind of put it together with what goes on in actual life on a daily basis, and to see that there's no transcendence,
Mm.
who really get down into living the way the world just is. Uh, is I remember somebody wrote a book a long time ago. Nobody ever promised you a rose garden.
Oh yeah. Lovely book. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of person who likes that kind of book, or people who were raised on Dickens and Emily Bronte and Judy Blume. Where things that you always get these incredible moments where the transcendent and the most ordinary interact, and that's where it is. And
Mm.
people who get really charged by that, by the extraordinariness of the ordinary,
Mm.
and
Oh,
even of the painful,
mhm.
especially of the painful.
Now, is
So
there anything that readers tend to come to you and say, "Oh my gosh, Pearl, I totally was not expecting that."
I totally was not expecting this.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, the parts of the story that have to do with the Japanese sections,
Mhm.
the the parts of the story that have to do with sustaining relationships that are
Hmm.
very destructive. Um, and I think we all like to see the hero and muddle through and make it through,
Mhm.
especially where it gets dangerous,
Mhm.
where they're almost at the edge of the precipice and you think, no, 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 don't fall. you know, I think that's always very thrilling. I know
Mhm.
it's always been very thrilling for me to see Indiana Jones in those situations, um, and where they can be very dramatic and kind of hokey even, but those are the things that keep you going and keep you reading. You
Yeah.
know, it's like E.M. Forster said, and then what happened? So I think that's the kind of stuff that I like to write. I hope it reaches people. Different tastes, of course. Some people could not bear the scenes, I imagine,
Mm.
between the Roshi, the Zen teacher, and her. But some of them are very funny. I love writing those.
Mhm. Um, Actually, kind of a good segue to the next question. So let's say somebody decides to explore this and they get 20 pages in. What will keep them reading?
Oh, yeah. What is this crazy woman going to do next?
Now, in one sentence, why should someone pick up this book?
Um, because you want a great afternoon.
I
That'll,
love it.
it'll take you everywhere and places that you never thought you ever wanted to go.
Mhm.
But you'll be so happy once you've been there.
Oh, I love it. Uh, what a fabulous answer. Well, and with that, honestly, thank you, Pearl. This has been, as always, a fabulous chat. And for anybody who's watching, well, you've got about a week until another week for the ebook of Phase Men to be available for 99 cents. So
Oh,
if you want to explore, definitely go check it out again until the end of March. Phase Men, 99 cents in ebook. And you can just go to the link that's in the banner and click on it, and it'll take you right to it.
oh,
So, again, with that, thank you so, so much, Pearl. Again, absolutely adored chatting with you. And have a fabulous rest of your day.
thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Always a pleasure working with you, Lisa. Ciao.